change the world through travel.
People are good. I believe in the general goodness of people.
To play and have fun and enjoy life and help other people do the same, right?
We're only on this planet for a short time. I don't know where we came from. I don't know where we're going after this, but my whole why in life is just to kind of be a witness to this place that I've been dropped upon, to see it, to appreciate it.
To figure out who you want to be in the world. We are thrilled to have Jeff LaGreca with us today on Eyes of Wonder podcast to talk about play. In Lori's book, Eyes of Wonder, she describes play as the most crucial vehicle children have for building ideas, growing socially, and working out emotional needs. And when we're thinking about, when Lori and I were thinking about who should be doing this podcast with us specifically, I was like, well, there's no doubt. It's got to be Jeff LaGreca. So I'm so excited to have you. You have studied theater and improv and creative writing, and you work with children and adults. So you probably have a pretty good idea of where the play starts to kind of leave us and how to get play back into us as adults, and the kinds of things that you do and help others to do to maintain that sense of play and joy and fun as we grow older, right? I understand that you have founded the Pancake game, and I cannot wait for you to tell us about that. But in
Oh,
the
I invented
meantime,
it. I invented it,
you
Roberta.
invented the Pancake game. I hope we get to play some of it. In the meantime, I would love it if you would start us out by just telling a little bit about your background and what you've done.
Yeah. So I've known you guys for quite a while because of the theater. We started working in the theater in my early days, right out of school. Studied the arts, and then I went to New York, and in New York got a national tour of a big musical, and I was so excited. I was like, now I've made it. And I traveled around the US, and I was vastly unfulfilled by the experience. I got back to New York and I was like, geez, what the hell am I going to do now? Because that wasn't what I thought it would be. And the first thing I did was I enrolled in an improv class. I actually had to audition to get into the company. It was Gotham City Improv. Starting there with that building block of improv. Improv is so much of it is about play, right? Which is what our discussion is today. The Gotham City Improv was the descendant of the Groundlings in Los Angeles. What it was a company that came out to New York. New York was a very tough nut to crack for improv groups for many years until the Upright Citizens Brigade figured out a different template to work with. But the Groundlings, very well known, Will Ferrell, all these great people, came out of the Groundlings. They came to New York, and they tried their model of running a theater, and it was really difficult. So they turned into the Groundlings. So the audition for something like that is oftentimes you'd come in and they would ask you to do a character or two, similar to Saturday Night Live, like, let's invent some characters. And then they might ask you questions, and you would answer in that character's voice. And then you would do a little bit of improv scenes. We'd improv a little bit, and you might get up there with other people who are auditioning. It can be a lot of fun. I auditioned for Whose Line Is It Anyway, way back in the day. And that audition was crazy. It was fun. And I was in a room with probably 50 people. And at one point it was chaos because the producers were like, okay, just run to the middle of the circle and tap into the scene. And it was just like, there were no scenes. It was like line after line after line. It challenged you in a different way. I have since grown to understand improv in a different way after studying long form, which is the big du jour, improv du jour, which is focuses much more on listening and scene work and really trusting your partner, and that leads to really interesting concepts and ideas. Whereas the Who's Line model is really fun, really based on play, but there's also a lot of jokes, and you got to get jokes in. And whereas, long form, those jokes develop with the audience, and you kind of build that together.
I've never done improv on a stage, but I feel like my husband and I kind of do improv every day. Like we act out little scenes. We have caricatures of our neighbors. Don't tell them
Right? And you
that.
probably naturally yes and each other, right?
Yeah,
Do you,
for
like
sure.
you just naturally do it. You don't even have to think about it,
Yeah.
and everybody at this point it's become common in the language. Everybody kind of understands what yes and is. Even people who aren't performers understand it. And people use it in business. I've taught corporate improv and stuff like that. And so people understand that that's a really collaborative thing. But it's an amazing component of play, because what happened is somebody down there, going back to before the Compass Players, before Mike Nichols, before Del Close, somebody discovered, just basically, it's like they watched two kids playing and went, "Oh, I see what they're doing." They kind of re-engineered it, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what yes and is.
Yes. And so it seems to me that all of that chaos and having 50 kids or 50 people in a room and having to tap them out and think on your feet probably helped you
Yeah.
with teaching.
It did. So, and there's a real thing of embracing the chaos, right? That you allow that energy to exist, and then you try to sort of bring it to a more of a focal point, right? Especially with kids, high schoolers, kids, and even grown-ups can get crazy. I started working with kids quite a bit once I got to New York, and I worked with some really notable companies like the 52nd Street Project, Center Stage, also known as CASA, which is Queen's Theater in the Park. And I was able to sit in with Daniel Judas Sklar. He's amazing, and his book Playmaking really influenced the way I work now. And it's really about the basis of theater, and it comes back to play. The book is called Playmaking, and it's about that sense of play. Um, so yeah, so working with kids, when I first started, there was always a lot of this sense of a teacher sort of, when they're trying to harness that chaos of like, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to treat you like professionals, but you have to act like professionals. I've heard that more than once. And to me, that's probably not the best way to approach the situation. But honestly, I don't know that that's the best way to approach any creative situation, depending on how you define that. Now, I define professionalism as, uh, more than anything, I define it as kindness and courtesy, right? Consideration, because everything really, professionalism falls into that, whether you're being paid or not. Professionalism falls into being considerate of others, being kind to others, right? And consideration, that takes care of everything. I don't talk to them like I think they're actors, or they're going to be, that this is their career or anything like that. I always just speak to them like the artists that I know them to be, treat them as the artists that they are. They're not adults. You can't treat them like adults. You have to treat them like artists, right? And I think that's really important. And when you do that, it just like, and usually they plug in, I think back on the last few years that I've been teaching and how I've really adopted that principle, and how the kids, most of the time, they plug into what's going on because they're collaborators now. We all started out, there's that famous saying, before we walked, we danced, before we wrote, we drew, before we talked, we sang.
It reminds me of my first day teaching middle school because I literally went into the group and I was like, here are the scripts and here's what we're going to do, and you guys are going to treat me with respect, and blah, blah, blah. And within, I mean, minutes, I was in tears because it was terrible. As the kids were like, no, we're not doing that. But that's how I had been trained. I had come up through the ranks and had directors like you and I were talking about earlier, Lori, who literally threw chairs, and it was like it's my way or the highway, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of how it. And I was like, well, I know how this works, so I'll give that to them. And I walked out of the classroom. I was crying, and the principal met me. And she goes, "You can go home. You don't have to come. You don't have to stay today." And I was like, oh no, because if I don't win this battle today, I'm toast forever, right?
I
Forever.
won't get back on the horse, right?
Yep. So
Yeah.
I went out and I thought about it and I was like, okay, okay, they don't want to do it my way. Let's see what their way is. And I went back in. We had a wonderful conversation. I said, what are you guys looking for? And they gave me all these creative, wonderful ideas, and they just wanted to play and have fun. And we did. And was success. And now middle school is my jam. I love it. So
Mine too. I taught middle school for about 4 decades, mostly orchestra. And I also taught improv in orchestra, playing musical improv.
Sure,
And one
sure.
element that I really had to impress on them, and it's important for drama too, is you can't worry about what other people think about you, or it's just going to mess up your whole creative process. You can't improv and evaluate yourself or worry about what someone else is thinking at the same time. So I bring that also into just a sense of play. We've been talking a lot about drama and music, but just playing in life. Like I will skip down the street. I have no shame. I will sing while I'm riding my bike really loud. I will blow bubbles out in public, and I'm just really, really goofy because I don't worry about what people think. And I think as we get older, when you're a kid, you don't worry about what people think. But as we get older, we're so worried about that. We're like, I wanna
Mhm.
jump in this puddle, but I'm worried about what people will think. I think we're wired to avoid pain, and we associate someone pointing or even raising an eyebrow as pain for some reason.
Mhm.
And so we want to avoid that. So I'm not going to do anything that's going to make somebody
Yeah.
raise their eyebrow.
You're like, I'm just relating to what you're saying, Lori, is that, it's understandable why adults become, you know, protective, because so often we can't, for us to take, and this has come from also working in corporate settings, you have to create a safe space, to do that. And I think that's
Yeah.
really important, if you watch kids playing in the playground, imagination takes over and there is this real sense of, we don't, whatever you're seeing from out there doesn't matter.
Play is what's going to really develop a human being. I'm going to name drop here. When I was doing a documentary on public schools, I interviewed Matt Damon's mom, Nancy Carlson Page, and she has dedicated her
Yeah.
life to keeping play in schools. Like my aunt worked in a preschool and they took away the blocks, they took away the art easels. And you're just going to focus on your studies and you're 3. So she has a lot of great material and work on keeping play in the schools.
Wow. This regimented approach to education, which we're finding so many people are saying, maybe we need to get rid of the desks and maybe we need to make it more about an interactive, learning experience. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think it's worth exploring. And you see a lot of people, wanting something more than let's train our little ones to live in a cubicle for the rest of their lives, right?
I was just thinking, making a living, to go out and make a living should really mean something different than what it means. When you first hear somebody say, well, we want to train you up so you can make a living, what do you hear?
That I have to go work in the
Money.
factory.
Money. Yeah, you have to go work in a factory and make money, right?
And have an insurance program and a 401k.
Yeah.
Right.
And nothing against someone who
Yes.
works in a factory. That's honest, decent work. It's what that makes me think of as a regiment. There's one way of doing this, and it's this way, right? And it's very, you know, so that's why I use that, reference.
Sure, of course. And it's
But,
not, it's just about the end goal, right? Making a living is
yeah.
money. I would like to make a living.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah.
So
Make it sparkle, right?
If you deprive yourself of that your whole life, at some point, midlife crisis, 60-year-old crisis, whenever, you're going to realize, oh, I deprived myself. I have some regrets here. You're going to feel
Yeah.
the emptiness somewhere. And some people feel that with opioids or alcohol. Look at how many depressed people we have because we're depriving ourselves of that.
Sometimes when our world feels fractured and we have so many things to do, we forget to enjoy this one life we are given. Eyes of Wonder Journeys creates opportunities for travel and discovery. Two performing arts teachers, Lori Gabriel and Roberta Hamilton Griggs, have formed a tour company that is focused on guiding travelers to some of the world's most iconic destinations. By exploring new places with curiosity and an open mind, we can uncover meaningful ways to enrich our lives. Through our eclectic tours and our new podcast, we meet a wide range of people who help us appreciate the opportunities our world provides.
When you're starting out, you write your play. It's a play. We're going to go out and present the play. And then as you write more plays, suddenly they become works. And now it becomes very serious. And now this is my work, and it's just this weird thing, this weird relationship we have with the two things that I think you do see. It's interesting that you mentioned, Lori, like grown-ups do try to access it, though we do reveal ourselves when we are in the act of play. We kind of show who we truly are. Like I love when I go to a party and there's a game, right? Those are the kind of things, or when you go over somebody's house, if people sit down to play a board game, all of a sudden they're no longer, as I grow older, I find myself becoming more of an introvert and less of an extrovert. And I'm a pretty extroverted person. But I find when I sit down to play games with people, any of that anxiety or anything that anybody feels about, talking and speaking and socializing with somebody, it suddenly just kind of dissipates because you're laughing and sharing the game with one another. And that creates new avenues of connection.
When you're actually in the moment, you're not checking, is that person over there judging me for playing this game? You're just there in the moment enjoying the game. And once we start being observed, there's a whole different thing. And what are we? I mean, Lori's talked about this so much with education, but what are we most of the time is being judged and assessed and observed. And it changes everything. When I'm teaching voice lessons, even we'll just be doing something. And then all of a sudden I'll say, okay, now go out into the larger part of the room and sing it like you're going to do the audition. And they just shut down. Because even though there's nobody else there right then, they imagine the person that's out there judging them. What you just said about professional theater and all that stuff. So many times, I just do community theater now, and I direct wonderfully talented community people. And when I say just, I don't mean, but I haven't done a professional show for a long time. And a lot of that is because I enjoy it so much more. Working with these people who just have this passion for play. Once it becomes a job, it's a job. And a lot of times people will come up to me after a show and go, oh, that's better than anything I've ever seen on Broadway. And I'm like, it probably isn't. But we do have something that you don't have, right? It's like the Wizard of Oz. We have something that they don't have, and that is freshness and a sense of, this isn't my job. This is my living. This is my life.
This is my magic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that if you look at it, community theater of the community, it's like, I love community theater and I love the idea of it. And that dates back to the beginning of theater, Aristotle and the Poetics. That was all about, they were always writing about their community. It was about, their theater was about the community. And we've kind of, because of these, again, capitalist approach to it, putting a financial marker on it instead of merit, letting it stand on its own merit artistically. There's that great line from The Paper Chase, where the professor, somebody calls somebody an amateur. And I don't remember the professor's name. Somebody will know it online. But he's the stodgy professor in The Paper Chase, and he says the Latin for amateur, is amo, amat, amas, and it's to love. And he says, and if you're asking me if I'm an amateur, I love this art, this thing, this performance, whatever it is, then absolutely I'm an amateur, because I love it. To make a living, to create a living, right, is really exciting then, because it's like, I'm not creating a living that's based on this one component, which is necessary and important, but also these other components of my life, that sense of living, you know, that's pretty cool.
100%. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so now tell us about your pancake game. The inventor of the pancake game.
So this is just a joke I have with my wife, but this is so awesome because it's going to be on in print on in the internet, and it's going to attribute me as the inventor. Do you guys go to Snooze? Are you aware of Snooze? I
I
love
am,
Snooze,
of course, yes.
and came into being on my birthday, April 2nd, 2006. Okay.
Oh,
My birthday is April. I didn't come
when you
into
were
being.
born, the day you were born.
Right, I'm that old. When I only recently moved back to Denver, and I still go back and forth between Denver and New York, but I'm mostly in Denver now. But when I was in New York for the past 30 plus years, whenever I would come back to visit, I would always take my dad to Snooze, and we would go to Snooze. My dad loves Snooze, and we would all go to Snooze. And I love it because they do that pancake flight, the three pancakes. So we play this game every time now, and I want to make it a thing. So we play this game every time, but we go and we play this game where somebody in our group chooses a pancake, and then we usually get the pancake of the day or the pancake of the week or the pancake of the month. And then we usually ask our server to choose one. It's a dumb game. And then we all eat the same thing. It's like an appetizer, and then we guess, and then we vote on it. That's the important part. We vote on what the best pancake is that day.
What the thing about snooze that I'm always amazed at, first of all, it is excellent. It is good. The waiters are great. The food is amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
But usually there's an hour and a half wait to get into snooze when you could just walk across the street and go somewhere else and just walk in, right? But I think that's a part of the human experience is we want to be a part of something that everyone
Yeah.
else thinks is cool. So if we can make play cool, then everybody will want to do it.
I think a lot of corporations are figuring that out. Like Google, is it, that has the beanbag chairs and the Lego building stations and things. And I'm reading now more about people, instead of sitting down for an interview, they're doing walking interviews out in nature. I would love to see a
Ooh.
swinging interview, like you're just on swings
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
traveling,
and we can.
make traveling cool.
And traveling cool for sure.
The enemy of prejudice and bigotry is travel, right?
I've been to 58 countries so far, and I often have people say, gee, must be nice to be able to travel. I don't have money. I'm a teacher. Now I'm a retired self-employed musician. But if you make it a priority, it will happen. It will just happen. And in the United States, people, it's not in their habit to travel because we're not given time off, really, like compared to Australia or Germany. I have cousins that get 6 paid weeks off because their employers realize, oh, when our people go traveling, they're much happier and more productive when they come back. And for anybody who hasn't done a lot of traveling, once you do it, you're just going to want more and more because you realize
Absolutely.
this playground sandbox of new toys that you never knew existed. You won't know unless you go.
And it expands you personally too, right? Like you grow as a person when you travel. And I'm not just talking, going to the resorts and you stay in the gated resort and you never leave the grounds. It's
Right.
like you go to these places and get outside of those gates and talk to people. You're right. I want to do so much more travel, Lori. And but it's one of those things like when people say to you almost disdainfully, like, oh, it must be nice, like you've done something wrong or
Yeah.
like you've made a bad choice in your life to choose travel over a 45-inch TV. And I think you're seeing a lot of this with Gen Z, and you saw it with Generation M with millennials, is that sense of I want to explore, I want to experience this life and not just view it through a screen. Nothing wrong with that. I love film, I love TV, I love all that stuff. But it's just things, a 2-car garage. I don't need that.
I love that. I love that we've started this travel company because some people don't do it because they're afraid or they don't know where to start. So doing it with a tour company that takes care of all that for you. Like we
Yeah.
find all these really cool, we try to find these eclectic, off the beaten path things, and we do the bucket list things as well. But we just plan it all for you. No worries. We're there with you to solve any problems. It makes it a lot easier.
But there's nothing wrong with creating that sense of structure because that safety structure will help people, again, creating a safe space so that somebody can start to explore and expand those boundaries, right? And that is one of the problems with America right now is this sense of isolation and that I don't need to go outside of my community. I have everything I need right here and I'm going to hold fast to this and not understand. I mean, you live in a place like New York, it's like living in several different countries and
Yeah.
your brain expands and that's what travel does.
And we can learn a lot from watching kids. Like I love
Yeah.
Story that I tell about these two kids I saw at an airport. They were just little toddlers. They came from opposite ends of the airport. They both had little tiny rolly bags. And they just saw each other and put their bags down and were hugging it out. And everybody was taking pictures like, oh, this is so precious. Two kids that don't know each other hugging. And then they went their separate ways. They're like, why do we let go of that?
Yeah.
Just keep doing that.
Have you ever
I
been
mean,
to a grocery store or something and you see somebody next to you and you're like, that is a person I really want to get to know. Like, but you can't just walk up to them and go, hey, you want to be my friend? But so many times I want that. I'm like, this is a person that I really want to hang out with, but you don't do it. You stop yourself because somebody's going to be like, I don't know, call the police or something.
Humor and improv help. I have this uncle who he'll talk to anyone and he always makes them laugh. And he has lines like that lines in his pocket. He's on an elevator and he says,
sure.
We are in the exact center of the surrounding area. and they have to think about it a minute and then they laugh at it. Because elevators are always so awkward. Everybody's looking at the numbers. Don't make eye contact.
That's an amazing thing to say too, because he's already created some sort of unification by expressing we as a group are in this together. And he's also avoided any sort of because I know nowadays, when you approach somebody that you don't know, we don't want to concentrate on anything, physical. You don't want to, even though you may mean well, like that's a beautiful dress.
Yeah.
You have to, we're trying to navigate that a little bit. And that's a much more human approach to something. It's, look at this. We're in the center of everything, It's kind of funny.
I love it. Yeah.
How do you, and then you yes and that, right? In life, you yes and that. We certainly are,
For anybody listening who wants to invite more play into their life, not sure where to start, like what advice would you have?
I would say I would say get involved in the arts. Anything that allows you access to others and their experiences would be a good thing to explore.
This has been so much fun, Jeff. Thank you.
Do you ever get so wrapped up in your day-to-day routine that you forget to play? Play isn't just for kids. Everyone needs a break from adulting. If you do it enough, you'll find ways to bring play into every aspect of your life with amazing results. On our Eyes of Wonder journeys, we make sure you have plenty of time to indulge your inner child, whether it's pedaling a swan boat or pretending to be a cowboy. Find a journey that the kid in you would love.